My mother and father declared I'd never belong at this wedding. Afterward, they booked the grand suite, bragging it was the most exclusive room. But from my penthouse view in the $300 million resort, I ordered cancel the bridal suite. They're not cleared to use it. Within minutes, the lobby erupted and my phone flashed with 38 missed calls. That gut-wrenching feeling? The one where your own family makes you feel like you don't belong, like you're an afterthought in your own story? What if that feeling led them straight into an empire you built, an empire they had no idea was yours? What the hell happened next? Oh, you're absolutely going to want to hear this. The air conditioning hummed, a low, steady drone that usually faded into the background. But that afternoon, it felt like a spotlight, highlighting the stack of contracts for Alpine Haven's summer expansion on my polished desk. My pen had been flying for an hour, lost in the rhythm, when my phone lit up. Mom. Just her name. I stared at it a beat too long. It had been weeks since we spoke, and every call from her, it carried this same icy politeness. Colder than the Denver air outside my window. I took a deep breath, braced myself, and answered. Hi, Mom. Claire, she said, her voice soft, careful, like someone dropping a pebble into perfectly still water. I wanted to tell you about Ethan's wedding. I froze mid-signature. Oh, it'll be small, just family. Very intimate. You understand, right? That pause. It stretched, long enough for me to hear the damn clock ticking above my door. I set my pen down, watching the sunlight shift on the desk. Of course, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I understand. She exhaled, a sound of pure relief. You've got so much going on with the company anyway, and honestly, it's just a different kind of atmosphere. I'm not sure you'd feel comfortable there. A different kind of atmosphere? I almost snorted. Right, I murmured, trying to keep my voice even. She just kept filling the silence, that nervous habit of hers. It's at a beautiful place, dear. Ethan and Sophie wanted something elegant, but private. You'd love it, I think. I knew exactly where this was going, but I let her finish. Anyway, we'll send photos. You'll see how beautiful it turns out. Sure, I mumbled. I'm happy for them. Good, she chirped, her tone lifting with finality. I knew you'd understand. The call ended with a soft click. I didn't move for a long time. The quiet in the room was heavy, suffocating, like that silence after an insult you've heard too many times to even react to anymore. The city outside gleamed, sharp and distant. I leaned back, letting out a slow, measured breath. Family. The way she said it. Small. Elective. Like a club I was never invited to join. Then, almost on autopilot, I turned back to my laptop. A headline blinked on my screen from some industry newsletter. Ethan Morgan and Sophie Bennett to wed at the renowned Alpine Haven Resort. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A low, humorless laugh escaped me. Of course, I whispered. The irony, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of it all. The very family who told me I didn't fit in had chosen my resort. The one I built from the ground up. Every marble tile, every glittering chandelier, every mountain view suite. They were walking into my creation without a single clue. I clicked open the company dashboard. Reservations. Guests. There it was. Morgan wedding party check-in scheduled for Friday. The system flagged the booking as very important person. I let my head fall back against the chair, eyes tracing the ceiling. Sometimes I muttered, they invite the whole world, except the person who built the stage. It came out calm, not bitter, just a stark, undeniable fact. Outside, the city began to dim. Streetlights flickered on, painting the skyline in hues of dusk. My reflection stared back from the glass, tailored blazer, hair pulled back, every inch the composed executive they never believed I could be. My phone buzzed again. Harper. My assistant. Harper, I answered. Hey, boss, you asked me to confirm this week's guest list. Yeah, I said, still staring out at the view. Anything interesting? A brief pause. Papers rustling. Let's see. Corporate retreat from San Francisco, a wedding party from Texas, and she hesitated, a family named Morgan, booking the grand suite. I'm guessing you know them. I let out a quiet breath. Was it a laugh? Maybe. Yeah, I said softly. I know them. Harper's voice dropped, cautious. Do you want me to flag the reservation? No, I said, leaning forward, elbows on the desk. Keep it as is. Let's make sure everything goes smoothly. Understood. When the call ended, I sat there for a moment, the corners of my mouth curving slightly. Not a smile, but something colder, steadier. They hadn't invited me. That was fine. Because soon, they would walk into my world. Under my roof. On my terms. The office lights dimmed automatically as evening deepened. I closed my laptop, stood, and walked to the window. Denver glittered like a map of constellations below. I touched the glass lightly, whispering to no one, "You built a world without me. Let's see how it feels when you have to live in mine." And with that, I turned off the lights, leaving only the city's glow behind me. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, washing my Denver office in a pale gold. I was waiting for the coffee machine when my phone vibrated. A notification banner slid across the screen. Morgan wedding weekend officially begins. The first image was Ethan and Sophie under an archway of white orchids, the mountains a blurred backdrop. Sophie's caption, sweet and sugary. The perfect start to forever. Linda's comment beneath it, so proud of our son. Dad had added a heart. That was it. No mention of me. I took a sip of coffee that had already gone cold. My stomach clenched, that familiar tight knot, seeing their perfect public smiles. That practiced performance of family unity. They'd gotten so good at posing without me. The glass door slid open. Harper came in, scrolling through an iPad, her brown hair pulled into a messy bun. "Morning," she said carefully, testing the room's temperature. I ran through the event list for the weekend. "There's something you might want to see." She handed me the tablet. The Alpine Haven booking interface glowed. Guest name, Morgan wedding party. Reserved for 4 nights, grand bridal suite. Special rate code applied. They used a corporate discount, Harper whispered. Under Alpine Haven's internal partner program. My eyes narrowed. Who authorized it? She swiped to the contract page. Linda Morgan, she read aloud. Signed as authorized by family. I stared at the screen, then handed it back. Family has a lot of definitions in my world, I said finally. Harper frowned. Do you want me to fix it? I can flag it to accounting. I shook my head. Not yet. Let them have their perfect weekend. Harper hesitated, wanting to say more, then nodded and slipped out. I walked to the wall of framed photos that lined the hallway, portraits of our resorts across Colorado, Utah, Montana. Each one a decade of work, sleepless nights, calculated risks. I paused at a picture of Alpine Haven's opening ceremony, 8 years ago. I was at the edge of the crowd, smiling for the camera, anonymous. Even then, they hadn't shown up. I ran a finger along the frame, feeling the chill of the glass. In my head, Mom's voice echoed, different atmosphere, dear. You wouldn't fit in. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. I went back to my desk. The coffee was bitter now, but I drank it anyway, watching the sunlight shift across the floor. My inbox pinged. Invoice confirmation Morgan wedding. I opened it. Wedding charge, $48,300. Charge to Alpine Haven corporate account. I stared at the number, the line of text pulsing faintly, daring me to react. $48,000 of company funds. My funds. Used by the same people who decided I wasn't family enough to attend. I leaned back, letting the absurdity of it settle. A small laugh slipped out before I could stop it. Perfect, I murmured. The city outside was already warming. The hum of traffic rising. Somewhere in the mountains, my brother and his fiancée were preparing to check into the resort they believed belonged to someone else. Posing for photos, sipping champagne, telling guests how proud their parents were. I closed the email. Let them, I whispered. Let them have their perfect pictures. For the next hour, I buried myself in work. But every so often, my eyes drifted back to the window. I could almost see the mountains from here, faint outlines on the horizon, the same peaks reflected in Sophie's photos. At noon, Harper knocked lightly. We've had confirmation of their arrival tomorrow, she said. Would you like the staff briefed about anything? Only this, I said. No one mentions me to anyone. Understood. She lingered a second. Are you sure you're okay with this? I met her eyes, calm. I'm perfectly okay, Harper. They wanted a perfect weekend. Let's make sure they get it. After she left, the room grew still again. The only sound was the air conditioning and the faint vibration of a new notification. Another post, another caption. Our dream wedding begins tomorrow at Alpine Haven. I let the screen go dark in my hand. They've already written their story, I said quietly to the empty room. They just don't know who owns the ending. I turned off the phone, stood, and walked out. In the corridor, the framed photos caught the light. Each one a reminder of everything they thought I wasn't capable of. By the time I reached the elevator, the tension drained from my shoulders. The doors slid shut. As the elevator descended, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall, composed, still unreadable. I straightened my blazer. Now they're really in my world, I whispered. The first black SUV rolled up the curved driveway just as morning light settled over the peaks. From my office window, the view was postcard perfect. The lake shimmering, Alpine Haven's glass facade reflecting the sky. Down below, staff lined up in their crisp uniforms, smiling like they'd practiced for weeks. I recognized them instantly as the car doors opened. Ethan first, in an immaculate gray suit. Sophie followed, all styled perfection in her white jumpsuit, camera crew trailing behind. Mom was next, her hair sprayed into place, wearing that same smile she wore at every charity event. Dad adjusted his jacket, surveying the resort like a man inspecting property he might want to buy. "Welcome to Alpine Haven Resort, Mr. and Mrs. Morgan," the concierge greeted warmly. "We're honored to host your family this weekend." Linda laughed, waving a hand elegantly. "It's beautiful. Just like the photos." She turned to the cameras. "Isn't this incredible, Sophie?" Sophie grinned at her phone, already live streaming. "Guys, we just arrived at the most gorgeous resort in Colorado. Wait until you see the view from our suite upstairs." I watched them through the tinted glass, coffee in hand. Harper stood a few feet behind me. Her tone was low, steady. They requested white orchids, premium champagne, and a room with a snow peak view instead of the valley. They also asked to use the bridal balcony for their welcome video. I didn't turn around. "Approve everything," I said. "Everything." Harper sounded surprised. "Give them what they think they deserve." She hesitated. "Okay." Outside, Linda posed for a picture beside the entry fountain, holding her son's arm. Sophie did a quick twirl for the camera. Their entourage followed them through the lobby, filming the chandeliers, the polished floors, the hand-carved maple banisters. I could hear their voices faintly through the security feed speakers. Compliments, laughter, small talk. Sophie's voice cut through most clearly. "This is going to be a dream wedding." I smiled faintly. Dreams have their costs. I switched screens on the wall monitor. Camera angles flicked through the property. The Morgans in the elevator, laughing. Sophie adjusting her hair. Ethan checking his reflection. Dad scrolling through emails. "Same performance," I murmured. Harper looked up. "Sorry." "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just watching old habits." A knock came at the door. Peter, our operations manager, stepped in, holding a folder. "Morning, Miss Morgan." The VIP arrival form you requested. He handed it to Harper, who scanned it, then froze. "Claire," she said carefully. "You'll want to see this." I turned, taking the folder. There it was. Our corporate check-in form, signed in confident cursive, Linda Morgan, co-owner, Alpine Haven Resorts. I stared at it for a long moment, then let out a quiet laugh that startled both of them. Peter shifted awkwardly. "Should I report this to legal?" I closed the folder, setting it gently on the desk. "No," I said. "Not yet." Harper frowned. "She actually signed as co-owner?" "Apparently." I leaned back in my chair. That's a new level of confidence, even for my mother. Outside the glass, the family moved through the atrium. Sophie filming everything. The marble floors, the mountain light. "This is perfection." Linda's voice carried faintly through the security audio. "Your father and I should come here more often. It feels like it was made for us." I glanced at Harper, who was watching me closely. "She's not wrong," I said. It was. For the next hour, I watched the flurry unfold. Staff escorting them to the grand suite. Photographers clicking. Floral designers rushing with orchids. They were creating their picture-perfect moment, every detail carefully staged. On one monitor, I saw Mom standing by the front desk, laughing with the concierge, as if she truly believed her name carried authority. She'd always been good at that, turning pretense into presence. Sophie's voice rose again. "Mom, come stand by the fireplace for this one. The lighting's amazing." I switched the feed off. "Harper," I said quietly. "Send the spa team to offer them the best welcome treatment we have. Champagne. The snow suite. Upgrade everything." Harper blinked. "You're really giving them the full treatment." "Yes," I said, standing and moving toward the wide glass windows. "Let them have it all. Every indulgence they think belongs to them." She closed her tablet, uncertain. "What's your endgame here?" I looked out toward the peaks, their white edges cutting into the blue sky. Nothing dramatic. Just perspective. For a moment, silence filled the office. Steady. Deliberate. Then my phone buzzed on the desk. An internal notification from accounting. I picked it up, scrolling through the email. And there it was. Another authorization form attached. The same forged signature, this time approving a shipment of imported champagne. I chuckled softly, shaking my head. She really thinks she's the owner. Harper raised an eyebrow. And you find that funny? Almost poetic, I said. They spent years pretending I wasn't part of this family. Now they've built their big moment on my name and still don't know it. She studied me, but I didn't elaborate. Outside, the family stepped onto the terrace. The wind caught Sophie's veil as photographers snapped away. Linda fixed the flowers. Robert checked his watch. Ethan smiled on cue. Through the glass, they looked almost cinematic, like the happy family portrait they'd always wanted. I caught my reflection in the window, faint and distant. A shadow against the bright view. My face calm, my eyes unflinching. Behind me, Harper placed the signed contract back on the desk. The gold ink gleamed. Perfect timing, I murmured, my voice barely audible. A forged signature, a borrowed title, and a perfect family photo. Couldn't ask for a better setup. Harper's brows knit. Setup for what? I smiled without turning. For them to meet the real owner. I reached for the folder again, tapping the edge against the desk before setting it down. Fake ownership, I whispered. Harper said nothing. The silence between us was thin and sharp as glass. Down below, the Morgans posed for another picture. Sophie blew a kiss at the camera. Linda beamed, and Ethan looked up briefly toward the building, toward the top floor where I stood. For a moment, our eyes might have met through the glass. Then he turned away, smiling for someone else. I exhaled slowly. Let the show begin. The morning of the wedding. It began with music. From my 12th floor office, I could hear faint violin notes drifting up from the courtyard where staff were setting up the archway. The air was cool, still scented with pine from the forest beyond the lake. It should have been a beautiful day. In every visible way, it was. Harper burst through the door, a file in her hand, her face tight. Claire, she said, breathless. We have a problem. I didn't look up right away. The screens in front of me displayed a dozen windows, reservations, security feeds, expense reports. The Morgans' name appeared more times than I cared to count. What kind of problem? She dropped the folder on the desk. They used the Alpine Haven corporate card again. Champagne upgrade, additional floral arrangements, decor rentals, and a live string quartet. All charged this morning. I scrolled through the digital log. The authorization signature blinked at the bottom of each invoice. Linda Morgan. I almost smiled. They're consistent, at least. Harper folded her arms. You said to let them have what they wanted. But this is fraud, Claire. That's your company's money. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of her words hang in the air. Outside the window, sunlight hit the glass in sharp angles, reflecting the snow peaks in blinding white. They used company assets, I said slowly, and signed my name through hers. Harper nodded. Exactly. So, what do you want me to do? I closed my eyes for a few seconds, listening to the faint hum of the resort beneath us. The footsteps, the music, the laughter rising from the lobby. Cancel the bridal suite. Harper blinked. What? Cancel the suite, effective immediately. List the reason as unauthorized booking under a fraudulent signature. Her face paled. That's the main room for the ceremony prep. Sophie's been live streaming from there all morning. Are you sure? Yes. My voice was even. It's time they learned what boundaries look like. She hesitated, searching my expression. You're really doing this. I'm not doing anything, I said quietly. I'm just enforcing company policy. Harper stared at me, then nodded slowly and turned toward the door. All right. I watched her go, the click of her heels fading down the hall. For a few seconds, I sat in the silence she left behind. My pulse was steady. My hands folded neatly on the desk. This wasn't revenge. It was accountability. Something they'd never learned to respect. When the email confirmation pinged on my screen, I exhaled once, almost soundlessly. The order had gone through. The grand bridal suite was now marked as revoked. Downstairs, the staff would already be receiving the update. I switched the monitor view to the lobby feed. Ethan and Sophie appeared at the front desk, surrounded by wedding planners and photographers. Ethan was on the phone, pacing, while Sophie leaned over the counter, still in her silk robe, makeup half done. The concierge smiled nervously, typing rapidly. I'm so sorry, ma'am, but it appears your suite has been deactivated. There's a flag from corporate. We're not authorized to check you in. Sophie blinked, not understanding. What does that mean? We're the bridal couple. It's our room. Ethan leaned forward. This is ridiculous. My mother handled the booking. Yes, sir, the concierge said carefully. That's part of the issue. I could almost hear the silence that followed, thick and uncomfortable. Then, Mom's voice cut through the speakers, sharp, commanding. "Excuse me," she said, stepping forward. "I'm Linda Morgan. My husband and I are the owners of this property. You will fix this immediately." The concierge swallowed, maintaining his composure. "Of course, Mrs. Morgan, but according to our records, ownership is listed differently." Ethan's tone rose. "Do you know who we are?" The concierge straightened his tie. "Yes, sir. And that's exactly why we have to follow procedure." Sophie's face flushed red. "This can't be happening. My followers are expecting the bridal suite reveal. You people are ruining my wedding." I watched as the lobby began to fill with murmurs. Guests paused mid-conversation. The string quartet trailed off uncertainly. Even the camera crew hesitated, unsure whether to keep filming. Mom's voice dropped to a low, furious hiss. "Call the manager now." "They already did," I murmured to myself. Harper appeared at the edge of the frame, speaking quietly with the concierge. Then she took a breath and stepped forward. "Mrs. Morgan, the decision came from corporate headquarters in Denver. I'm afraid the booking violated policy." Mom stared at her. "Policy? I am the policy here." Harper stayed composed, though I could see the flicker of nerves in her posture. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The authorization has been revoked by executive order." For a heartbeat, the entire lobby froze. Then Ethan slammed his hand on the counter. "This is insane. I'll have your job for this." Sophie started crying. The kind of loud, dramatic sob that drew eyes from every corner of the room. A bridesmaid tried to comfort her while whispering into her phone, clearly recording. I turned off the sound and leaned back in my chair, the faint smile returning. The screen showed chaos. The kind of chaos they'd always believed they were immune to. The intercom buzzed. Harper's voice, controlled but shaky. "It's done. They know." "Good," I said. "Let the staff keep things calm. No further engagement." She hesitated. "Do you want me to unlock the suite later?" "No," I said. "They'll stay exactly where they are. Let them experience imperfection for once." I ended the call and glanced back at the muted feed. Mom stood in the middle of the lobby, trying to pull herself together, whispering furiously into her phone. Ethan paced. Sophie's tears turned into angry shouting. From a distance, it looked theatrical, even absurd. But beneath it all, I recognized something I hadn't seen in them for years: uncertainty. The moment when control slips through your fingers and you don't know how to get it back. I switched off the monitor and sat in the quiet again. Outside, the morning sun was climbing higher, spilling light over the peaks. Somewhere below, the wedding staff scrambled to recover, to keep guests distracted, to make the day look beautiful again. I knew they would. That's what people do when the illusion cracks. They patch it up fast and pretend nothing broke. I picked up my phone. One new message from Harper blinked across the screen. "Lobby is contained. Guests unsettled but calm. The Morgans are demanding to speak to ownership." I typed back, "Ownership is busy." Then I set the phone down, stood, and walked to the window. The lake sparkled like glass under the sun. I could still faintly hear the string quartet starting up again, the music returning to fill the void. For the first time that day, I let myself smile. Quiet. Steady. Certain. "They wanted a perfect wedding," I said softly. "Now they'll learn what perfection costs." By noon, the lobby was chaos. The music had stopped, replaced by the rise and fall of angry voices echoing through the vaulted ceilings. Guests lingered near the cafe, pretending not to watch, but clearly unable to look away. Sophie stood at the center of it all, her face streaked with tears, her phone clutched in one trembling hand. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "Do you even know who we are?" Ethan paced behind her, his phone pressed to his ear. "Mom, calm down," he muttered, though his own voice was shaky. "I'm trying to fix it." Mom wasn't listening. Linda Morgan slammed her palm against the marble counter, making the pens rattle. "I will sue you," she yelled at the concierge. "This is defamation, humiliation, whatever you want to call it. You can't treat us like this." The concierge, to his credit, didn't flinch. "I'm very sorry, ma'am, but the system has flagged the booking as invalid. It's out of my hands." "Out of your hands," she repeated, incredulously. "Where are your owners?" "My husband and I own this property." Across the lobby, a group of travel journalists had just arrived. Among them, Emily Rodas, a reporter with a camera always ready. She raised an eyebrow, catching the scene from a distance. "Who are they?" she whispered to the event coordinator beside her. "The Morgans," the woman said under her breath. "VIP guests." Apparently, their wedding suite was cancelled. Emily's eyes widened slightly, the beginnings of a smile tugging at her lips. Seriously? The coordinator nodded nervously. Apparently. Emily's camera was already rolling. From the mezzanine balcony above, I could see everything. The staff trying to calm them. The guests pretending not to stare. The way Sophie's perfect composure cracked on camera. Harper stood a few feet away from me, watching the same scene unfold on the surveillance monitors. She glanced over. Do you want me to stop the feed? I shook my head slowly, my eyes never leaving the screen. No. They're writing their own ending. I'm just watching it happen. On the main monitor, Sophie raised her voice again. Who canceled my suite? I demand to know. The concierge hesitated. According to the system, the order came directly from corporate management. What does that even mean? She snapped. It means, he said, choosing his words carefully, that the decision came from the Denver headquarters. From the top. Ethan turned sharply toward Mom. Did you do this? Did you talk to someone? Linda's jaw tightened. Of course not. Why would I cancel my own son's wedding? He ran a hand through his hair and swore under his breath. Then who the hell did? In the corner of the lobby, Emily whispered to her cameraman, keep rolling. Linda straightened, fury hardening her tone. Call Claire, she said. She works for this place. She'll know who to talk to. Sophie sniffed, wiping her mascara-streaked cheeks. Claire? You mean that Claire? Yes, Mom snapped. Call her. Ethan hesitated, but dialed anyway. The sound of the phone rang through the air, faint but distinct. Everyone within a few feet could hear it. Upstairs on my desk, my phone lit up. Ethan Morgan calling. For a moment, I just watched it buzz. His name, bright and insistent. Harper turned toward me. Are you going to answer? I lifted the phone, studied the name, then set it back down, face up. The vibration continued for a few seconds, then stopped. The silence afterward was heavier than the ringing. Downstairs, Ethan frowned at his phone. She's not picking up. Mom's voice rose again, sharp enough to cut glass. Of course she's not. She's probably too busy doing God knows what. We should have known better than to trust her with anything important. Sophie gasped softly, as if she just remembered something. Wait, what if she's the reason this happened? Maybe she's jealous. Jealous. Ethan shot her a look, but she was already speaking to the camera crew that had started filming again. We've been treated so unfairly, she said tearfully. We came here in good faith, and now they're sabotaging our wedding. I'll make sure people know. Emily adjusted her lens, catching every second. Upstairs, Harper's voice broke through the quiet. They're losing it. The journalists are filming, guests are recording, and social media is going to explode in about 5 minutes. I took a slow sip of coffee, then let it sit. Harper looked at me, incredulous. Claire, this could go viral. It will, I said. That's the beauty of it. We watched as Mom turned back to the concierge, her voice trembling with outrage. You don't understand. We are Alpine Haven. My husband is Robert Morgan. That name means something here. The concierge looked genuinely sympathetic. I understand, ma'am, but according to the records, ownership belongs to Alpine Haven Holdings, registered in Denver under CEO Claire Morgan. The entire lobby seemed to inhale at once. Mom froze. What did you just say? The concierge hesitated, realizing too late what he'd revealed. It's company policy to clarify in case of conflict. Ethan's face drained of color. That can't be right. Sophie's voice broke. So she's the one? Mom turned away sharply, her voice dropping to a whisper. I could still hear it through the speakers. No, that's not possible. But it was. Harper looked at me, eyes wide. Do you want me to intervene? We could still. I shook my head. No. Leave it. Claire. Your mother's about to. She's about to learn, I said softly. On the screen, Mom gripped the counter, the composure she'd worn like armor starting to crack. Dad had appeared now, his face tight with embarrassment. Linda, he said quietly. Let's step outside. She jerked away from his hand. Don't you dare tell me to calm down. Sophie's sobs turned to hiccups. Ethan stood rigid, his phone in his hand, staring at nothing. Around them, guests whispered, phones lifted, cameras flashed. I picked up my phone again. Another call. Ethan's name flashing. I watched it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I flipped it over, silencing it. The room around me was still, save for the low hum of the monitors. I could see everything. Every fractured smile, every panicked gesture, every desperate attempt to salvage the image they'd built. I spoke quietly, almost to myself. Sometimes silence costs more than words ever could. The phone stopped vibrating. Downstairs, the chaos continued, a perfectly orchestrated unraveling. I turned back to the window, the sunlight spilling across the mountains, the resort glittering beneath me. Somewhere below, my family fought to control the narrative. They still hadn't realized the story was already over, and I didn't have to say a single word to end it. 3 hours later, the world knew everything. By mid-afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Alerts, mentions, headlines, push notifications. Twitter had turned the Morgans' meltdown into entertainment. The hashtag Morgan wedding disaster had climbed to the top of the national feed, nestled between celebrity gossip and political scandal. The video Emily Rodas had shot in the lobby was everywhere. Her voiceover was calm and cutting. At the Alpine Haven Resort this morning, the Morgan family, who claimed to own the property, were denied access to the bridal suite by corporate headquarters. Sources confirmed the resort's ownership lies elsewhere. The clip cut to my mother's voice, sharp and furious. "We own this place." Then the concierge's reply, soft but firm. "Actually, ma'am, that's not accurate." The image froze on my mother's stunned expression before fading to black. The internet had already looped it into memes, GIFs, and reaction videos. At the Denver headquarters, I sat behind my desk, watching the chaos unfold on 3 different news streams. Harper stood by the window, scrolling through her phone. "They've turned it into a trend," she said quietly. One headline says, "Family confuses resort ownership with entitlement and gets denied at the altar." I didn't look up from my computer. Catchy. A new alert flashed. Abigail Green calling. I accepted. Her voice came through, clipped and tight. "You told me there wouldn't be a scandal." "There isn't," I said. "Claire, your family's on every major outlet in the country." "Yes, my family," I said evenly. "Not the company. Not me." "I can't have this," she snapped. "If this affects valuation, if it touches our investors," Abigail, I interrupted. "If you think this changes anything about Alpine Haven's worth, maybe you should reconsider why you invested in the first place." There was a pause. "Don't get clever with me. If this goes south, I walk." I leaned back in my chair. "Then you'll walk away from a company with the most transparent leadership in the country. The one whose CEO refused to fake anything, even her own family." For a long moment, all I heard was her breathing. "Then you're playing with fire." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I built the fireplace." The line went dead. Harper turned from the window. "That went well." I smiled faintly. "About as well as I expected." She hesitated. "PR is asking how to respond. Reporters are calling nonstop. Do you want to make a statement?" "They're already telling the truth," I said. "It just took a camera for anyone to believe it." Harper nodded slowly. "Still, it's spreading fast. Someone leaked that the CEO's name matches your mother's maiden name. People are speculating." "They'll keep guessing," I said. "And when they realize, they'll stop laughing." Outside the office, the Denver skyline shimmered under the afternoon light. The hum of the city felt far away, like the sound of a different life. My computer pinged with a new message. I clicked it open. The subject line read, "From Ethan." "Claire," it began. "If you have anything to do with this, please stop. Mom hasn't eaten since this morning. She's in shock. She keeps saying she didn't know. You've made your point. Please just fix it." I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Harper was watching me carefully. "Something from him?" "Nothing important," I said. She didn't push. The news anchors' voices filled the room again. A chorus of smooth tones, dissecting my family's implosion like it was a political debate. One reporter gestured to the screen behind him where an image of the Alpine Haven lobby looped endlessly. "Sources suggest the Morgans attempted to leverage familial influence to gain access to restricted suites," he said. "However, corporate records show the resort's ownership has no legal connection to the family. The true CEO remains unnamed." I turned off the sound and leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment. In my mind, I saw Mom's face again. The look of disbelief, the panic just before the cameras caught it. I could almost hear her voice. "This isn't who we are." But it was. It always had been. The office was quiet except for the faint ticking of the clock. Harper finally spoke. "You know they're going to try to spin this. They'll say it was a misunderstanding, that you're overreacting. They've spent their whole lives rewriting stories," I said. "This time, they don't hold the pen." She studied me for a moment. "You're calm." "I've been calm my whole life," I said softly. "That's what they mistook for weakness." Another message appeared on my screen. This time from the resort manager in Colorado. "The Morgans have checked out of their rooms. They left without paying the balance." Do you want to pursue it legally? I typed back, no. Let them leave owing something. That's the closest they'll ever come to balance. Harper crossed the room, setting a fresh cup of coffee beside me. You should eat something. I'm fine. You've been staring at that screen for 3 hours. I built what they tried to fake, I said. I can stare at it as long as I want. She sighed, but didn't argue. When she left the room, I stood and walked toward the window. The sun was lower now, streaking gold across the city skyline. I could see my reflection faintly against the glass. Still composed, unbothered. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Ethan, but I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew the tone. Apology wrapped in guilt. A plea disguised as family. I let the phone buzz until it stopped. They only remember you, I said quietly, when you become the story they can't control. I turned back to the desk and pulled up the live news feed one last time. A panel of analysts was debating whether Alpine Haven stock would rise or fall after the publicity. The ticker at the bottom read, CEO remained silent amid scandal. Silent. It was the first time silence had ever sounded like victory. Outside the light shifted, and the office dimmed. I let the glow from the monitors fade into shadow, the noise of the world fading with it. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the background, the afterthought. Now my silence was the headline, and they finally had to listen. By late afternoon, the mountains outside my office had turned gold. The sun was sinking behind the ridge, light pouring through the windows in long, slanted beams. I was reviewing a contract when there was a soft knock at the door. Peter, the operations manager, stepped in carefully. Miss Morgan, he said, his tone uneasy. The Morgan family is here. They're requesting to see you. I looked at the clock. 5:43 p.m., send them up, I said. He nodded and disappeared. For a few seconds, I stood still, looking out the window at the horizon. The resort below looked calm again. Guests drinking by the fire pit. Staff moving quietly between shifts. The kind of peace that usually follows a storm. When the elevator doors finally opened, the calm in the room shifted. Mom came in first, her expression drawn tight. The practiced poise of the morning replaced by exhaustion. Dad followed, jaw clenched, one hand on her shoulder. Ethan trailed behind them, head lowered. I didn't move. Mom stopped in front of my desk. Claire, she began, her voice uncertain. You're the CEO. For 8 years now, I met her eyes. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Dad broke the silence. We just wanted the day to go smoothly, he said. His voice was firm, but I could hear the cracks. We wanted a perfect wedding for your brother. You could have told us, he added. Told you what? I asked quietly. That I exist? That I built something without your permission. He flinched, just barely. I reached for the folder on the desk and laid it open. Here, I said, turning it toward them. A copy of the wedding invoice, the one paid with company funds, the one signed by Mom. Mom's hand trembled as she looked down at the page. I just wanted to make sure everything was handled. I didn't think it would matter whose name. It matters, I said, cutting her off, though my tone stayed calm. It matters when you forge signatures. It matters when you spend someone else's money. It matters when you lie. Her eyes filled with tears. Claire, please. I only wanted Ethan to have one perfect day. He's worked so hard. And I haven't? I asked softly. I built this company from nothing, Mom. Every brick, every piece of glass in this building has my name behind it. But you never thought I was the kind of person who could create something worth your attention. She shook her head. That's not true, isn't it? I asked. You called this place beautiful before you knew who built it. But if you'd known it was mine, you wouldn't have come. The words hung there between us and no one dared to move. Ethan finally stepped forward, his voice low. I'm sorry, Claire. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't even know you owned Alpine Haven until today. I looked at him. My little brother, the golden boy who never had to fight for a seat at the table. That's the problem, Ethan, I said. You never asked. You never cared to know. You've spent your whole life believing that I was just lucky to be nearby. He swallowed hard, eyes dropping to the floor. You're right. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound came from the clock on the wall, ticking toward 6. Harper stood silently near the corner, watching, but saying nothing. Dad cleared his throat. We can make this right. We'll release a statement. Correct the misunderstanding. You don't have to. I closed the folder sharply, the sound cutting through his words. No, you don't fix this with a statement. You fix it by telling the truth. Dad frowned. The truth? Yes, I said. That you forged documents to use company money. That you humiliated yourselves in public because you thought pretending was safer than being honest. That you've been living off appearances so long you forgot what real looks like. Mom's lip trembled. Claire, please. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. I've understood for years. The silence deepened. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Mom started crying softly, and Dad turned his gaze toward the floor. When I finally spoke again, my voice was quieter. You wanted a perfect wedding. You got your spectacle. And now everyone's seen who you really are. Mom looked up, her mascara smudged, her voice breaking. I never meant to hurt you. I know, I said. You just never meant to see me either. The room went still again. Harper shifted slightly, but didn't move closer. I closed the folder and pushed it aside. I'm not filing charges, I said. But you should know. I could. That's what forgery means, Mom. Fraud. A real court case, not a family argument. She looked horrified. You wouldn't. No, I said, because unlike you, I don't need to prove I'm better. I just need the truth to stand on its own. Her sobs filled the quiet space. Dad reached out as if to comfort her, but stopped halfway. Ethan whispered, What happens now? Nothing, I said simply. You go home. You live your lives. Maybe this time you'll remember that owning something doesn't make it yours. For a long moment, no one moved. Finally, Mom turned away, shoulders shaking. Dad led her toward the door, his hand heavy on her arm. Ethan lingered a few seconds longer, his eyes searching mine. I really am sorry, Claire, he said quietly. I nodded once. I know. He hesitated, then followed them out. When the door clicked shut, the silence returned, thicker than before. Harper exhaled softly. You okay? I sat back in my chair, eyes on the empty doorway. I'm fine, I said, though my voice felt distant. She looked at me for a moment longer, then nodded. You did what you had to. Did I? I murmured. Harper didn't answer. I turned toward the window. The last light of the day was fading behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the floor. The air smelled faintly of rain and cold glass. Somewhere below, the staff was preparing for the evening reception, trying to make the place feel normal again. But up here, the air was still thick with everything left unsaid. I ran a hand along the edge of the desk, feeling the cool surface beneath my fingers. I don't need their apology, I said quietly. I just needed the truth to sit in the same room with them for once. Harper didn't reply. She didn't have to. The truth was sitting right here with me. By the next morning, the story had changed hands. It no longer belonged to gossip threads or rumor columns. It belonged to headlines. CEO of Alpine Haven revealed, Claire Morgan. That was the title splashed across every major outlet. The accompanying photo had been taken 6 months ago at a company charity event, me in a navy suit, standing beside my executive team, a glass of champagne in hand, smiling like someone who didn't realize she'd become a symbol. The article painted me in flattering tones, the woman behind Colorado's most successful luxury resort chain. Quiet, private, brilliant. Every line felt surreal. It was the first time my name had ever appeared beside my success, not my family's shadow. I sat at my desk in Denver watching the online counter climb. Views, comments, shares. My face, my name, my story, all of it was suddenly public. Across the glass walls of my office, sunlight poured in, cold and pale. Harper stepped in, holding her phone, her expression a mix of disbelief and pride. They're calling you the invisible CEO, she said. The woman who built an empire in silence. I almost laughed. They're not wrong. She crossed her arms. The media can't get enough of you. Everyone's reposting the article. You're trending on LinkedIn and Twitter. Ironic, isn't it? I said quietly. All it took was a scandal I didn't start. She hesitated before speaking again. The Morgans shut everything down. All there. Accounts gone. No statements, no photos, nothing. The press is already looking for them. I nodded once. They'll stay quiet. They're better at disappearing than admitting fault. The phone on my desk buzzed. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Miss Morgan, a call for you. Abigail Green. Put her through. There was a short click before Abigail's voice filled the line. She sounded different, less sharp, almost measured. I owe you an apology, she said. For what? I told you I'd pull out if things went south, she said. But I've seen the reports. Your name is everywhere, and not one mention of impropriety. You handled it elegantly. I was wrong about you. I smiled faintly. You weren't wrong. You were cautious. A pause. Then her voice softened. I won't be selling. I want to stay in. You're good for this company. I didn't do it to keep your investment, Abigail, I said. I did it to keep myself. The line went silent for a moment. Then she said quietly, that's why you'll last longer than people like me. The call ended. Harper, still standing near the window, asked, so she's staying? Yes, of course she is, I muttered. Everyone wants to stay when the storm clears. I looked at her, my tone gentler. Would you have stayed? Harper smiled a little. Always. The room fell quiet again. The air was still, the only sound the hum of the city below. She lingered by the door, studying me for a moment before asking softly, do you regret it? Any of it? I turned toward the window, watching the morning light scatter across the skyline. No, I said finally. I just returned the silence they taught me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The intercom buzzed again. My assistant's voice, someone dropped this off for you. A young staffer entered, holding a phone. My personal one, not the company-issued device. It's been ringing all morning, he said carefully. I glanced at the screen. 38 missed calls. Mom. Sophie. Over and over again. The phone vibrated again in the boy's hand. I reached out, took it, looked at the names glowing across the display, and then set it face down on the desk. Thank you, I told him. He nodded and slipped out quietly. Harper said nothing. She didn't need to. The silence between us said enough. I stood and walked toward the window. Outside, Denver stretched out in shades of white and silver. Snow had begun to fall, soft and slow, dusting the glass. Funny, I said quietly, almost to myself. Everyone calls it karma, like it's supposed to burn. Harper tilted her head. And what do you call it? Peace, I said, when you no longer need to explain yourself. The wind howled faintly outside, rattling the edge of the window. After a moment, I stepped out onto the balcony. The air was sharp and cold, the kind that cleared your lungs. Below, the city hummed in muted sound, and in the distance, the mountains glowed under the weak winter sun. I leaned on the railing, closing my eyes as the first flakes of snow landed against my skin. The world felt quiet again. Not empty, but balanced. Behind me, through the glass, I could see Harper still standing near my desk. Arms crossed, watching the snowfall. She didn't say anything, and I didn't move to go back inside. I stayed there, letting the wind push through my hair, watching the white drift fall over the city. Karma wasn't fire. It wasn't fury or spectacle. It was this stillness, the kind that arrives when there's nothing left to defend. The phone on the desk buzzed one last time before going silent. I didn't turn around. I just kept looking at the horizon, the snow blurring the mountains into pale ghosts. Sometimes victory doesn't sound like applause. It sounds like the quiet after everything that needed to be said has already been heard. A few weeks later, the air in the valley had changed. The snow had thinned, replaced by sunlight that glowed soft and gold against the peaks. The resort had settled back into its rhythm. Staff smiling, guests laughing, the sound of clinking glasses echoing through the halls. But this day wasn't about luxury. It was about something simpler, something new. Aurora Hall stood just beyond the main lodge, its tall windows catching the light like mirrors of the sky. What used to be an old service wing had been rebuilt into a space for community events, a place open to anyone who needed it. The brass letters above the doors gleamed, Aurora Hall, a home for all voices. I arrived early, the crisp air biting gently at my skin. Workers were setting up tables with fresh flowers and trays of pastries, laughter floating up from the courtyard. Guests began to arrive one by one, women from small towns who'd built their own businesses, employees who'd been with Alpine Haven since the beginning, volunteers from local shelters. Harper stood near the stage, checking the microphone levels. When she spotted me, she smiled. They're all here for you, you know. They're here for themselves, I said, straightening the small stack of note cards in my hand. That's the point. By noon, the courtyard was full. Sunlight spilled across the deck, glinting off glass and snowmelt. Harper took the stage first, her voice carrying easily through the mountain air. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, today, we celebrate more than a new building. We celebrate the idea that silence can be transformed into strength, that closed doors can lead to better ones. She turned toward me, her eyes warm. Please welcome the woman who turned silence into a legacy, Claire Morgan. The applause came like a wave, gentle at first, then growing steady, human. I walked up to the podium, the wind brushing my hair back. For a moment, I just looked at them. The faces in the crowd, the laughter, the sense of belonging that filled the space. Thank you, I said quietly into the microphone. Aurora Hall isn't about me. It's about what happens when people are told they don't belong and decide to build anyway. A hush settled. I could feel the weight of the moment, the shared understanding. When I started Alpine Haven, I thought success meant being seen. I continued. But I learned something different. I learned that real success is when you create a place where everyone feels welcome, even if no one ever claps for you. I looked out toward the mountains, their peaks burning bright under the sun. Aurora Hall is for anyone who's been turned away, overlooked, or told they weren't enough. You don't need an invitation to walk through these doors. Just belief. Belief in yourself and in what you can build. The audience was quiet, listening. I saw a few people nodding, some wiping their eyes. This, I said, gesturing around us, is proof that the things meant to break us can become the foundation for something better. Sometimes the silence they give you isn't rejection. It's space to build your own voice. When I stepped back, Harper hugged me quickly before I could escape to the edge of the crowd. The applause rose again, brighter now, mixing with the music that started playing from the speakers. For the next hour, I wandered among the guests, talking to small business owners and community leaders, women who'd driven from towns I'd never heard of just to be here. One of them, a baker from Wyoming, grabbed my hand and said, "You have no idea how much this means to us. Someone finally built something for people like us." I smiled. That's all I ever wanted to do. As the sun began to dip lower, Harper joined me near the balcony railing, a cup of coffee in her hands. The valley below shimmered in the amber light, the snow glowing soft like silk. "So," she said, leaning beside me. "What's next?" I looked out at the horizon where the peaks met the fading sky. "More places like this," I said. "For anyone who's ever had a door closed in their face, I want them to know they can build new ones." Harper smiled. "You really think one person can change all that?" "No," I said, "but one person can start." We stood there for a while, saying nothing. The laughter from the courtyard drifted up to us, light and real. Below, guests were taking photos near the new hall, their silhouettes framed by the last light of the day. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and snow. I breathed it in and let my shoulders drop, the tension I'd carried for years dissolving into the air. Inside the hall, the lights flickered on, warm gold against the twilight. The name Aurora Hall glowed softly above the entrance. I stepped forward onto the balcony, the cold air brushing against my skin, and watched as the first hints of evening settled over the valley. The mountains turned deep blue, the kind of color that only comes at the end of a long day when the world finally exhales. For the first time in a long time, I felt still. Not waiting, not proving, just being. My voice came quietly, almost carried by the wind. "They said I wasn't invited," I murmured. "They said I didn't belong. But every door they closed taught me how to build another one." The last of the sunlight slid behind the ridge, bathing the resort in a soft golden haze. Down below, Aurora Hall gleamed like a lantern against the snow. "If they say you're not invited, build the place they'll wish they never left." The camera of memory seemed to pull back then. The resort framed by mountains, the windows glowing, laughter echoing faintly in the air. I stayed there watching the light fade, knowing that this time the silence didn't mean exclusion. It meant peace. So, after hearing all of this, I have to ask, have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever felt like you had to fight for your place, even within your own family? What would you have done in my situation when they walked into your world, completely clueless? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd really love to hear from you.